Hi guys, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe my channel and like my videos. Please support and this help me to go on YouTube explore and watch my channel. The desolate highway. The night stretched out before me like a vast, empty void as I drove down the desolate highway, my only companions the faint glow of my headlights and the rhythmic hum of the engine. It was late, much later than I had intended to be on the road, but work commitments had kept me tied up until well past midnight. As I navigated the winding road, my thoughts drifted to the comfort of my bed awaiting me at home. But the solitude of the night weighed heavily on my mind, casting a pall of unease over my journey. Suddenly, a thick fog rolled in, obscuring my vision and cloaking the road in an impenetrable veil. I cursed under my breath, squinting through the haze in an attempt to discern the path ahead. With each passing mile, the fog seemed to grow thicker, swallowing the world around me until all that remained was the narrow strip of road illuminated by my headlights. Panic began to rise in my chest as I struggled to maintain control of the car, my hands clammy against the steering wheel. Just when I thought the fog couldn't get any denser, I caught sight of something looming in the distance, a figure standing at the side of the road, barely visible through the mist. My heart skipped a beat as I slowed to a crawl, unsure of what I was seeing. As I drew closer, the figure resolved into a young woman, her features obscured by the swirling fog. She appeared to be hitchhiking, her thumb extended in a silent plea for assistance. Instinct told me to keep driving, to ignore the spectral apparition and continue on my way. But something about her presence tugged at my conscience, urging me to stop and offer her aid. With a trembling hand, I brought the car to a halt beside her, the engine idling in the oppressive silence. She approached the window slowly, her movements fluid and graceful, despite the eerie surroundings. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the drone of the engine. "I've been waiting for someone like you." Unease prickled at the back of my neck as I studied her face, searching for any sign of deception. But her expression remained impassive, her eyes fixed on mine with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. Without another word, she climbed into the passenger seat, the fog swirling around her like an ethereal cloak. As I pulled back onto the road, a sense of dread settled over me, the weight of her presence hanging heavy in the air. We drove in silence for what felt like hours, the fog refusing to dissipate despite the passage of time. I tried to make small talk, to ease the tension that hung between us like a tangible barrier, but she remained aloof and distant, lost in her own thoughts. Just when I thought I couldn't bear the silence any longer, she spoke, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Do you believe in ghosts?" she asked, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. I hesitated, unsure of how to respond. "I suppose I've never really thought about it," I replied cautiously. "Why do you ask?" She turned to me then, her gaze piercing through the darkness with an intensity that made my blood run cold. "Because," she said softly, "I am one." I recoiled in horror, my hands shaking against the steering wheel as I struggled to process her words. But before I could react, she reached out and grasped my arm with a strength that belied her delicate appearance. "You don't understand," she pleaded, her voice filled with desperation. "I need your help. I need you to take me home." I tried to pull away, to escape the confines of the car and the suffocating presence of the fog. But her grip only tightened, her fingers digging into my flesh with an otherworldly strength. And then, in the blink of an eye, everything changed. The fog dissipated, revealing the road ahead in all its desolate glory. But when I looked beside me, the passenger seat was empty, the young woman nowhere to be found. Shaken to my core, I slammed on the brakes, bringing the car to a screeching halt in the middle of the road. I searched frantically for any sign of her presence, but there was nothing, only the empty expanse of the highway stretching out before me. With a trembling hand, I reached for my phone, desperate for some semblance of connection to the outside world. But when I dialed for help, there was no answer, only the static of an empty line. Alone and terrified, I sat in the darkness, the weight of the night pressing down on me like a suffocating blanket. And as the hours stretched on, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that somewhere out there in the darkness, she was still waiting for me, her ghostly presence haunting my every move. Second story. Midnight highway. The night hung heavy over the desolate highway, cloaked in an eerie silence, broken only by the faint hum of tires against asphalt. Amanda gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles turning white as she navigated the darkened road. She had been driving for hours, her mind lost in a labyrinth of thoughts and worries. As the miles stretched on, fatigue began to weigh heavily on Amanda's eyelids, threatening to pull her into an uneasy slumber. But she fought against it, the adrenaline of the road keeping her alert despite the late hour. Suddenly, a flash of movement caught her eye, a shadow darting across the road in front of her. Amanda's heart leaped into her throat as she slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a halt on the deserted highway. Heart pounding, she peered into the darkness, searching for any sign of what had caused the disturbance. But the road lay empty before her, swallowed by the oppressive blackness of the night. Shaken but determined to press on, Amanda shifted the car back into gear and continued down the road, the encounter lingering in the back of her mind like a persistent echo. As the hours wore on, Amanda's fatigue grew more pronounced, her eyelids heavy with the weight of exhaustion. She fought to keep her eyes open, the monotony of the road stretching out before her like an endless abyss. But just when she thought she couldn't bear it any longer, the darkness seemed to shift, coalescing into a figure standing at the side of the road. Amanda's breath caught in her throat as she slowed to a crawl, her heart racing with a mixture of fear and curiosity. The figure appeared to be a young woman, her features obscured by the shadowy veil of the night. She stood perfectly still, her eyes fixed on Amanda's car with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. Amanda hesitated, unsure of what to do. Was the woman in need of help, or was she something far more sinister? She couldn't shake the feeling that there was something off about the situation, something that set her on edge. With a trembling hand, Amanda rolled down the window, the chill night air washing over her in a wave of cold. "Are you all right?" she called out, her voice barely more than a whisper. The woman said nothing, her gaze unwavering as she continued to stare into the darkness. Amanda's unease grew with each passing moment, the silence stretching out between them like a taut wire. And then, in an instant, the woman was gone, disappearing into the night without a trace. Amanda's heart pounded in her chest as she stared into the darkness, a sense of dread settling over her like a heavy blanket. With a shaky breath, she pressed down on the accelerator, the car lurching forward as she sped down the highway. But no matter how fast she drove, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of being pursued by something unseen and unknown. As the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, Amanda breathed a sigh of relief, grateful to have survived the night. But deep down, she knew that some encounters were best left forgotten, lost to the darkness of the road and the mysteries of the night. Thanks for watching, please subscribe me.